Hello, and welcome to Overflow of the Heart. Today we're going to be finishing up chapter 1 in Matthew. So that means we're studying the family tree of Jesus, the last 14 generations. So we've already gone over the first 14 generations, Abraham to David, and the second, David to the exile to Babylon. So now we're starting with the exile to Babylon and those after it. We also made sure to cover those kings that were heroes and villains, the ones who did good in the eyes of the Lord and the one who did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So let's continue on with chapter 1, verse 12. After the exile to Babylon, Jeconiah was the father of Shealtiel, and Shealtiel is the father of Zerubbabel. Now Zerubbabel is the last person in the genealogy that we know information about. They were the one who returned from exile and was given the title governor of Judah because there was no longer kings. They also helped to rebuild the temple of God. Let's continue in verses 13 through 16. Zerubbabel was the father of Abihud, Abihud the father of Eliakim, Eliakim the father of Azor, Azor the father of Zadok, Zadok the father of Achim, Achim the father of Eliud, Eliud the father of Eleazar, Eleazar the father of Mathan, Mathan the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, who is called the Messiah. We don't know hardly anything about these ancestors. We just know that Matthew made sure to include them to equal the number of 14 going from Abraham to Jesus. We'll hear a lot more about Joseph later in this video, but besides him and Mary at the very end, the rest of them are kind of unknown to us. Sometimes, just like this genealogy, there are people or situations, even experiences in our past that we don't know about, and other people don't know the hurt, the pain, the anger that comes with those stories. But it's important for us to know that God knows the stories. He knows the plan and how each little hurt or pain is going to lead to His plan ultimately. I think that's something big we can take away from not knowing the stories in this part of the genealogy. Though we may not know them, God does, and it definitely led to His bigger plan. So let's read on in verse 17. Thus there were 14 generations in all from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the exile to Babylon, and 14 from the exile to the Messiah. Remember, Matthew was adamant about making sure there were only 14 generations in between each one of these significant events, because 14 is what David's name represents in Numbers. And the whole point was for him to point back to the prophecy that David received from the prophet Nathan, that his ancestors, through his line, the Messiah, would come. And so Matthew is making sure that we know that Jesus is that Messiah. He is the one who came through David's line, who will save us. He specifically wanted to make sure the Jews of that time who had studied these prophecies knew that Jesus was the fulfillment of the prophecy of David. The last section in chapter 1, verses 18 through 19, talks about the birth of Jesus. This is how the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law and did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. Joseph is pledged to be married, engaged to Mary, and then all of a sudden finds out she's pregnant. The law says there are very severe consequences for having sex outside of marriage and for being unfaithful. But Joseph decides that he wants to divorce her quietly to not bring that ridicule and shame upon her. That to me sounds a lot like a hero attribute that came from his line. I definitely think that we would be hearing, and he did good in the eyes of the Lord in his story. So let's read on. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. Did you hear that one part? Joseph, the son of David? Even the angel in the story was emphasizing that the Messiah would come through Joseph's line and that he is the son of David. It goes on to say that he should name him Jesus. God wasn't going to mess around. He knew what he wanted his son to be called on earth, so he made sure Joseph knew what to name him. Read on with verse 22. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. So who was that prophet? Isaiah, you might have heard of him, is a major prophet in the Old Testament. And he actually prophesied to someone we've already read about, Ahaz. Ahaz was one of the villain kings. Remember, he was the one who sacrificed his son in the fire to other gods. So Isaiah was prophesying to Ahaz about many things that were going to take place, and Ahaz was not believing any of it. So within these prophecies, Isaiah gave the prophecy we just read, that a virgin would give birth to a son, and that was going to be a sign to all the people that what God was saying was true, and that would be the Messiah. So this prophecy came true when Mary conceived through the Holy Spirit Jesus. And it's the prophecy that was being told by the angel to Joseph in the story we just read. How outrageous is that a virgin would give birth? Let's read on in the story. Verse 24. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord commanded him and took Mary home as his wife. But he did not consummate their marriage until she gave birth to a son, and he gave him the name Jesus. So Joseph wakes up from this dream, immediately takes Mary as his wife. When she gives birth, he gives the son the name Jesus. No hesitation. He believed the angel at what they said, and he followed through. That sounds a lot like his ancestor Abraham when he left for Canaan. Definitely a hero attribute. So that wraps up chapter 1. Matthew makes sure that we all know that Jesus came through David's line, through Joseph, and that he is the fulfillment of prophecy that was given to David from the prophet Nathan. Matthew made sure in the genealogy to include Jews and Gentiles, heroes and villains. He didn't want to leave out the different components of Jesus' past, to make sure that we know that no matter what our past looks like, he still has a bigger plan. And then the last section of the chapter is all about Jesus' birth and this outrageous story that a virgin could give birth to a son, and the knightly man who chose to stay with her and be her husband and to be his earthly father. The takeaway from Joseph's story, hopefully we can be an example just like him, that we can follow God's will immediately and not look back, no matter the fear or the discomfort or even the ridicule. Because I'm sure there was some. When other people found out that wasn't his son, but he still stayed with Mary and married her, there could have been a lot of reasons for him to walk away. But he listened to the angel and he believed in God and he stuck to God's will, no matter what, immediately, without looking back. Let us all have that kind of faith like Joseph. I hope you guys have a great day. I love y'all.